A very warm welcome to you as you join us on today's episode of Tax Matters. My name is Olumuyiwa Matuloko, and with me on today's episode is Radiant Chiamaka.
Hello, viewers.
We are right in the middle of December 2017 already, and that means that we have just a few more days into 2018. Our prayer is that we will all be ushered into 2018 in glory. But then we have a lot to contribute. For example, we must, as of necessity, stop forthwith the use of mobile phones while driving. Drive to stay alive. If a call comes through on your phone, park on a lay-by and take your call before proceeding. We are enjoying the Federal Road Safety Corps to be very strict on enforcement of this rule. People must be prevented from taking calls, from texting, from watching videos while driving. Of course, also, pedestrians use their phones and pay little attention to oncoming or traffic coming behind them. Watch out for them. On today's episode of Tax Matters, we want to talk about a nagging issue: multiplicity of taxes. Is it a myth? Is it a reality? Nigeria, of course, you know, is run on a federal constitution. Nigeria is divided into 36 states, which are in turn divided into 774 local governments. We must point out also that even in countries where they have unitary systems, the central government is still divided along constituent units. Britain, for example, Nigeria's colonial master, is run as a central government, but then it is further divided into a string of bureaus, metropolitan counties, and councils, which within their jurisdictions oversee waste management, libraries, education, healthcare, social welfare, recreations, leisure, and generally keeping the environment safe.
In the United States of America, which is a federation, local governments are governmental jurisdiction below the level of the states. Most states in the United States have at least 2 tiers of local governments, counties and municipalities. In all cases, these local governments perform functions such as education, highway building and maintenance, hospital and healthcare, as well as police protection.
As it is in the UK and the USA, so it is in Nigeria. In fact, across the world, taxes are a veritable source of income for the running of these services. In Nigeria, there are, like we said earlier, 3 tiers of government. And as the law permits today, the federal government is empowered to collect a total of 9 taxes, while the states are empowered to collect a total of 25 taxes, charges, levies, and fines. The local governments, on their own part, are empowered by law to collect a total of 21 taxes, charges, levies, and fines. We have taken the pains to use all these terms to afford us the opportunity to be as broad-based as possible. Because as you will find out as the program progresses, there's a need to distinguish between fines and charges and levies and taxes. But more importantly, because we're going to use our understanding of those terms to determine whether indeed Nigeria has multiplicity of taxes. And of course, what we're going to be sharing with you on today's episode of Tax Matters is a treatise, a presentation on multiplicity of taxes delivered by an heritage scholar, Professor Abiola Sani.
On Tuesday, 28 November 2017, Professor Sani, Lagos State Professor of Tax and Fiscal Matters at the Department of Commercial and Industrial Law in the University of Lagos, delivered the very first annual lecture of the endowed chair at the J.F. Ade-Ajayi Auditorium of the University of Lagos. The title of the lecture was Policy, Legal and Administrative Imperatives in the Quest for Eradicating Multiplicity of Taxes in Lagos State.
And that is what we're going to be sharing with you on today's episode of Tax Matters. But before we go into the lecture, what really do people understand by the term multiplicity of taxes?
I'm the chairman of NASME, Lagos chapter. NASME is Nigeria Association of Small and Medium. I've been saying this anywhere I go, that I cannot imagine SMEs of this world to pay 30%, just like the lack of Dangote. So I'm of the opinion that if we can reduce the tax rate and incorporate all the PMOs, we will get more money for the government. We know our members, we know some of them are not paying rent yet, but if we incorporate us, co-opt us, we know them, we will get more money for the government.
I'm representing startups, so to speak. Yes, the stamp duty for incorporation, I think it's about 7,500. So, but we later looked at the statement of CAC. So the impression they give us is that for every 1 million naira, you have to pay 7,500, 7,500, 7,500. And some of the youth we are organizing, they don't have anything at all. So they are trying to come up. And I appreciate what in the speech of the chairman, that you are trying to harmonize this tax at the local, state, and so that there will be no tax burden will be reduced. I have to commend the effort of the government. They are making a lot of effort now to reduce this burden. So is it possible for the FIRS to reduce this stamp duty something for the startups? So because we should allow them to grow before we start imposing burden of taxation on them.
I want the FIRS to see how we can assist companies operating, particularly in Lagos State. We are paying 3 levels of taxes. They pay tax with respect to, VAT to federal inland revenue. Then Lagos State comes around to collect consumption tax on the same income. Then the local government comes around to collect entertainment tax on the same income. I think they should look into this.
That was at the recently concluded Lagos International Trade Fair, precisely at the FRS Day held at the fair, at which taxpayers were given the opportunity to bear their minds. Mr. Siraku Sekechi, Director and State Coordinator in charge of Lagos Island operations of the FRS, stood in for the Executive Chairman of the FRS at the occasion.
The very first question had to do with high tax rate. You'll agree with me that the issue of tax rates is not within the purview of FIRS. We are tax administrators. The lawmakers make the law. The executive make the policy. From the policy, laws are made. The moment laws are made, ours as tax administrators is just to implement the law to the letter. No more, no less. And if you want to canvass, I know you have a pressure group, the SME. I know you have of late been winning the sympathy of government and even the National Assembly. If you want to canvass under private member bill, you can sponsor a bill to advance your cause to reduce the tax. With respect to the multiplicity of taxes in Lagos, unfortunately, in Nigeria we are practicing fiscal federalism. The states have their own laws and right to collect taxes as prescribed under the law. The local governments, they also have right to collect specified taxes as listed, even though in the name of rates and levies. At the federal level, our own authority to collect tax is guided by both our Establishment Act and the various companies' laws, company tax laws, including petroleum profit tax. Unfortunately, the VAT you refer to is having a common base as the base for entertainment tax that is collectible by the Lagos State. There is nothing anybody can do without going through the process of amending the tax law through the National Assembly.
Multiplicity of taxes. What did Professor Sonny have to say at the lecture? Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, Federal Minister of Finance, was chairman of the occasion.
Multiplicity of taxes discourages investments and impacts negatively on our economy. And the federal government has committed through the revised national tax policy to work with both state and local governments in harmonizing and eliminating multiple taxation. Indeed, it is stale legislation and regulations that create multiple taxation because people find creative and administrative solutions to new problems. The truth about taxation is that it must change almost on a daily basis. It must change in response to changing commercial conditions. 5 years ago, nobody bought anything on the internet. How do we tax online business? How do we tax Nollywood? How do we tax all the activity that is coming on board on a daily basis? So there's a need for constant research and constant engagement in order to have a tax policy that is fit for purpose. What we must not do, which is something we have done in the past, is go and copy and paste regulations from other jurisdictions and impose them in Nigeria. It doesn't work. We must come up with our own solutions. Where Nigeria is a unique nation, every country must come up with its own solution. So if we don't research, if we don't keep at the cutting edge of what is going on within our economy, it is very easy to go and bring an unworkable tax law and impose it in Nigeria. We're committed to ensuring that doesn't occur. And so this lecture, any engagement on taxation is very welcome by this administration.
It's my singular honor to speak on this topic, policy, legal and administrative imperatives in the quest for eradicating multiplicity of taxes in Lagos State. This is a problem that has challenged us, and we have tried all ways in order to solve it. Brilliant minds, institutions have put hands together, put brains together in order to find a pathway that will lead to sustainable solution, but we have not been able to hit the nail on the head. Multiplicity of taxes in Nigeria has over time attracted national and international opprobrium. In 2016, Nigeria was ranked 182 out of 190 countries on ease of paying taxes survey. On the basis that there were 59 tax payments with average rate of 34.3%, which require about 908 hours to comply. By contrast, Qatar, which came first, had only 4 tax payments, an average rate of 11.3%, requiring an average of 41 hours to comply. It is possible, I'm not very sure, it is just possible that the survey may have been influenced by taxes and levies approved list of Collection Act, which I will subsequently refer to as Cap T2, which gave the false and erroneous impression that there is a long list of taxes in Nigeria. Part 2, I looked at taxes and levies. Except in Nigeria, I don't think there's anywhere where the two words will normally go together. But in Nigeria, you can hardly talk about one without the other. So, do they mean the same thing? Do they mean different things? If they mean the same thing, why are we describing the same thing in two different ways? And I looked at it and I gave a definition, a proper definition of tax, which tallies with what the definition in the revised national tax policy. And here we refer to taxes as all compulsory payments to government without any direct benefit to the payer, irrespective of the name that it is called. We should use the word tax only for payments for which there is no direct benefit. Then what about levy? Levies, the meaning is wider in the sense that it also includes taxes. Because if you look at the word levy as a verb and also as a noun it means any payment. So if you are talking about any compulsory payment to government, whether there is a direct benefit or not, it is appropriate to use the word levy. But There are so many levies for which you can see a direct link between the payment and also certain services that are being conferred on the payer. When you pay for permit to erect a building, that is a levy, it's not a tax. When you pay for permit in order to have a license for your car, there are so many things you have to seek government approval for in order for you to proceed. So anytime the bright line rule is if there is a direct link between the payment and also certain services, it is a levy and not a tax. We should disaggregate the meaning of taxes and levies. And we should use taxes only for payment for which there is no direct benefit, and also use levies for payment for which there is direct benefit.
If I don't have a car, I won't be required to pay for vehicle license, will I?
No. If you don't have a business, you will not be asked to pay for business premises registration fee.
Or for advertisement or signage fee.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I quickly look at the evolution of multiplicity of taxes. It was Soren Kierkegaard who said, life must be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. In order to develop the appropriate responses to the menace of multiplicity of taxes, we need to trace how and why it crept into the tax system of Nigeria. There's a singer who said the military did bad thing. So they did a lot of bad things as far as the tax system is concerned. And what did they do? As soon as the military came, in order to become popular, they abolished some state taxes. They unified some state taxes. Taxes can never be uniform in a federal system. There are states who may even choose not to impose certain taxes because of certain policy objectives. So they reduced, so we began the race to the bottom, unified taxes, and it got to a point where the states virtually became dependent on the federal for its revenue every month. So it stopped all the initiatives or the competition relating to revenue generation. The situation got so bad that at the time, some of the states did not even have a functional board. Then, the boards of some states were mere units in the Ministry of Finance. So, some very smart tax consultants came together, put a proposal together, and said, we can do something to help you. And they said, if we are able to mark up your revenue by this margin, we will take this percentage. The consultants invested heavily, and they demonstrated boldness. They revitalized some of the redundant provisions of the tax laws, which even tax practitioners, I wasn't a practitioner at that time. Practitioners had to look at the books and say, all these things that they are doing, are they really in the tax law? And they found them that they were there. For example, this training, yes, Section 104. And they said, truly, what these guys are doing are in the law. So, state was trying very hard to generate revenue through means. States, they introduced sales tax. That ran into some constitutional problems in the case of Alaja and Yika Beruagba and AG of Ogun State. So they were in search of desperate solutions. So what they did was some military administrators actually gave them the full backing to actually go and do as much as they can do under the program called Accelerated Revenue Generation. Apart from the statutory stipulated taxes, they also look at other revenue heads. And this is where some aspect of multiplicity of taxes started. So they say, how can someone want CFO and you'll be charging 5,000 naira? Money that you need to build a house, now you can use it to process permit alone. And it also takes a long time. So they started all this. And because of the huge revenue potentials and the revenue yield, the military administrator at that time gave them all the support because the revenue was paramount. So in the course of time, other states gradually bought into this program, which started in Niger State. They bought into it, including Lagos State, and that was when Lagos State revenue phenomenally increased. So a number of taxpayers were not happy. Nobody is happy paying taxes. Nobody pays tax with smiles. So they went to court and challenged a host of the actions of the tax consultants, but most of the actions failed on the basis that no one can challenge an edict or a decree of the military government. So all those cases failed on preliminary grounds. So like I said, when all this were developing, stakeholders in taxation did not just fold their arms. There are people here who fought tooth and nail to make sure that this menace was curtailed, because they discovered that it was killing the tax system. They used JTB as the engine of incubations of appropriate policies to do something. So what did they do? They came up with a circular directing states not to exceed certain limits, and also they challenged states or prohibited states from introducing certain taxes that were not on that circular. Of course, you can see the attitudes of states that have attorney generals who will advise them on the limits of their power. So they just looked at it and said, look, JTB did not have power to do all this, so they continued. So JTB went to the drawing board and then enacted the provisions of that circular into law. And this helped a great deal, but it didn't solve the problem. These are the summaries of that decree. The decree 1 seeks to override the provisions of the Constitution, because at that time they felt that they wanted to make a law that will provide a new legal order. 2, it prohibited any other person except tax authorities from collecting taxes. Then it also said members of the police force shall only be used in accordance with the provisions of the tax law. It prohibited anybody from mounting roadblocks. Then it prescribed the amount chargeable for certain levies. For example, renewal of premises levy, registration of premises, business premises levy, and all that. Then it imposed penalties, 50,000, and imprisonment for 3 years. Very great intervention. Captive 2 stopped some of the manifestations, or arrested some of the manifestations of the tax consultants for a while, but not permanently. So the consultants devised new means. They devised new methods, because that law actually aimed at the jugular of the tax consultants, some of whom have become very prosperous and very influential. And what did they do? They changed their modus operandi. So they started operating in a closer alliance with the state board. They even moved their offices to the boards, and they started generating documents which the board chair was signing. So they were able to seamlessly carry on the operation as if they were part of the board. So JTB returned to the drawing board and mobilized towards the amendment of the Personal Income Tax Act. They said every state must now have a board. The law also prescribed the composition for these boards. So consultants now moved to the local governments because they could no longer operate at the states. So multiplicity of taxes now became a national problem. JTB also went to the drawing board and then said every local government should also have a revenue authority. So they said put in place a revenue committee for each state, and also have something like the JTB at the state level that is called Joint State Revenue Committee, so that they can intervene at the state level the way the JTB had been intervening at the federal level. In 2010, Lagos State also demonstrated its commitment to solve this problem by enacting its own law, which now was modeled after the federal law. If the federal law had achieved all its objectives, Lagos State law would also have achieved the same objectives. But as we are going to see in my conclusion, the federal law did not achieve all its objectives on a sustainable basis, and also Lagos State has not achieved its objective, despite the fact that this law had been in existence since 2010.
Time, oh time. Time has caught up with us, and we have to move on for the next program. This brilliant presentation has to continue next episode.
Next week.
Keep a date with us. From Amaka,
Have a blessed week.
thank you for watching.